this video of the egg-shaped craft was one of the peak moments of the interview conducted by investigative journalist Ross Coulthard, and the whistleblower this time was a former Special Operation helicopter pilot, whose name is Jake Barber. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to this channel and check the links in the description. Barber claims that he was part of the US secret program for the retrieval of crashed UFOs. We already heard about that program from other trusted whistleblowers, like David Grush, for example. Another former special agent, Grush gave his testimony in Congress. The task of Jacob Barber was to pilot the helicopter and pick up special payloads. Many of them were top secret but conventional crafts, but a few of them were of non-human origin. His claims are supported by other veterans and members of the UAP task force. At least, this is what is told in the interview. The journalist Ross Coulthard has done a great job bringing to light such a compelling story. Yes, it raises many questions, but it can be nonetheless a turning point for the discussion about UFOs or UAPs. Barber said he and his colleagues felt it was of non-human origin, and he said that later on members of the UAP task force confirmed this to him. The footage, is said in the interview, was independently obtained by News Nation, so it is not known at the moment who filmed it. The interview is compelling also because of the issue of safety of military personnel directly involved with UAPs. Once again, as it was for other whistleblowers like David Grush, Luis Elizondo, and many others, even in this case, the subject suffered some form of threat to his life. He also suffered physical injuries, apparently caused by exposure to some form of radiation. Barber points to some mysterious payloads, some closed boxes he often had to pick up with his helicopter. And the immunologist Gary Nolan, who reviewed his medical records, says in the interview that his injuries were compatible with radiation of some kind. Before we continue, let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked at the night sky? I always enjoy stargazing, and I use binoculars to look at the stars. They are much more convenient than telescopes, lighter and easier to carry around. That's why I've put together a list of the best binoculars and night vision goggles. Check the links in the description. When choosing a binocular, consider the quality of the instrument and its luminosity. For example, 8x40 and 10x50 binoculars are popular choices. Larger magnification and bigger lenses can be challenging to hold steady. The first number represents the magnification, while the second the diameter of the lens in millimeters. With a good pair of optics, you can explore the stars, spot satellites, or even investigate mysterious light in the night sky. Also, consider night vision optics for specific uses like observing animals at night. I have hand-picked top-rated gear from the best stores online. Check the links and find the right one for you. Now let's continue. What Barber says is that in the retrieval program, there are some individuals called Psionics who have the ability to communicate and interact with those non-human crafts with their mind. This is what I want to explore in this video, because if it is true, it's a confirmation of what's been speculated for years, and it also opens to an invitation for every one of us to look at our hidden abilities. Or maybe it's just a matter to rediscover something that we forgot. Barber said that there are some specific individuals in the crash retrieval program that can somehow summon these crafts with consciousness. Crazy as it seems, they can ask those UAPs to land, and then the team would retrieve them. After his involvement with the special program, the former pilot has now created a new team with some of his colleagues, and the new group is called Skywatcher and works in coordination with various agencies. So the collaboration with the government is ongoing. For example, the Skywatcher team was sent to investigate the so-called drone sightings which were all over New Jersey in the last year. But the interesting part is the story of an attempt to summon one of the UFOs by the Skywatcher team. In fact, they tried to replicate what used to happen in the crash retrieval program. They worked with a psionic person and tried to summon a UAP. The thing worked, at least in part, because a smudge, a sort of orb, appeared in the sky. But after some minutes, a second UAP appeared, as if the two were dogfighting, and the psionic felt uncomfortable and had to stop the session. In the News Nation segment, they show how they did it, and they indeed captured something on camera. This ability of being supposedly capable of connecting telepathically could be in essence an hidden ability of the mind, something that was part of our evolutionary background, maybe some form of collective consciousness or collective unconscious. Maybe you have heard about remote viewing and the Stargate project. Stargate project was the name of a program or a series of programs conducted around the 70s and beyond. They involved the investigation of remote viewing and psychic abilities. A handful of individuals supposedly skilled with those psychic powers were studied and used for special operations. They had to identify targets at distance, even from other parts of the world, just with their mind. The training and testing of those individuals apparently continued for some time, until the program was officially closed, and the findings about remote viewing has been said inconclusive or at least too much individual dependent. However, in recent years, people involved with UFOs or UAPs have suggested that remote viewing is absolutely real. But if we really can reach far distance with some form of extension of our thoughts or of our consciousness, perhaps this can be a skill that can be used to communicate or interact with other entities. And that's where psionics and contact experiences come into play. Because someone tried to apply the ability of the mind of limitless communication to interact and even summon UAPs. And this leads us to the concept of a close encounter with UFOs, one which is somehow solicited not by alien part, but from humans. The classification of close encounters with potentially alien beings was suggested first by the astronomer and researcher Joseph Allen Hynek. He suggested, for example, that close encounters of the first kind involved visual sightings of a UFO within about 500 feet or 150 meters. Close encounters of the second kind is an encounter where some physical effects can be witnessed, like traces on the ground, and the close encounters of the third kind are perhaps the most famous. This is an encounter in which an animated being or entity is present. Later on, other researchers suggested new classifications for those encounters. For example, Jacques Vallée introduced a concept of an advanced contact or interaction, and he labeled it close encounters of the fifth kind. But then the UFO researcher Stephen Greer suggested the definition of close encounters of the fifth kind as we intended today. Close encounters of the fifth kind is an event where individuals or groups use a specific technique in order to establish communication and connection or even interactions with non-human entities. And this kind of contact employs meditation and such techniques. So are we entering a time when anyone might attempt to communicate with extraterrestrials? We are undoubtedly heading into fascinating times, but these developments raise important and sometimes uncomfortable questions. First, why has the reality of UFOs and the potential presence of aliens been kept secret for so long? Imagine the progress that could have been achieved if this knowledge had been shared decades ago. Our technology, especially in the energy and transportation sectors, might look entirely different today. However, there could also be legitimate safety and security concerns that remain beyond our understanding. Another question is whether the ability to summon UFOs with the mind is something anyone can do, or if it is a unique skill reserved for certain individuals. My perspective is that this particular topic should be approached with caution. Perhaps it's best to first deepen our understanding of meditation, consciousness, and the human psyche before attempting such practices. The concept of a common intellect or a universal mind has intrigued many philosophers throughout history. From the ancient to more recent history, we had, for example, Plato, who advocated for the existence of the world of forms, where ideas existed independently of the material world. After him, many others like Plotinus, Aristotle, and the medieval theologians and philosophers, they all investigated the relationship between the material and immaterial world. Perhaps today we feel more in touch with Carl Jung. He suggested the concept of a collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypes and experiences common to all humans, a sort of shared psychological structure. All these philosophers share the idea that the human intellect might not be entirely isolated, but it's linked to a broader, transcendent or collective entity. It's time, perhaps, to rediscover a realm that humanity had always tried to explore. It's only recently that humankind has abandoned metaphysics in favor of the predominance of technology. If you are intrigued and want to explore this subject more, I've created a list of recommended books and resources. Check out the description of this video for links. I am confident that we will see more testimonies and whistleblowers to come forward. After all, if this unfolding disclosure leads us to a deeper understanding of our spiritual or immaterial side, it can only be seen as a positive step forward. The journey ahead may redefine not just how we see the universe, but also how we understand ourselves. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more insight and updates